and we've got almost half of the folks who have signed up, which is great. So happy that you've all joined us today. Those of us living and working in the Ottawa region, we honor the peoples and land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. I'm acknowledging the land on which I am presently sitting as the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. We, of course, honor all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. We've grown accustomed to referring to as Canada. I make this acknowledgement first to bear witness to which people were here first, and to also make clear my respect and gratitude for what those people have made possible for me and many others like me who now call this land home. Administratively, Lori has shared a test of the emergency broadcast system is anticipated for 12:55 p.m. this afternoon. We'll therefore endeavor to conclude before all of our cell phones and other devices start squawking at us. This session is being recorded, and pending Lori's approval and pending the important approval of the Pavro leadership, I'll be pleased to share the video and other material with all of our participants today. As an introduction, Lori has an extensive skill set and a broad and varied background in volunteer leadership, management, training, education, and writing. In our widening circles of expertise, Lori is definitely someone to have on the team. I sincerely believe her two presentations, one today and a second one in mid-December, will reflect the unique and valuable position she holds in these areas in which many are interested. Please extend a warm welcome to Lori Gotlieb. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you. I like that introduction. You need to go on the road with me.
Okay.
So I'm gonna get this long bio, and all I think is I'm old. I've been around a long time. So thank you. And I kind of, love teaching for Pavro. These are my peeps. I've been around in the field for a really long time, probably 40 years at this point, almost. Can't believe it. I always am thinking about how we can do things better. So this hour that we're going to spend, I'm going to challenge you a little bit, get you thinking. I want you to be creative. This is my favorite topic. We can do no wrong when we're trying to market volunteers or recruit volunteers. And the fact is, the landscape is forcing us to change how we engage in our communities when it comes to volunteers. Couple of housekeeping things on my end. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you want to ask a question you think is going to be a little bit longer, feel free to email me. I'm always available. I try to help where I can. I've also given you my website and my podcast, which was my attempt to take some of my content and put it into these little 10-minute news bites. So hopefully you get some content from there. And I hope you enjoy the hour. So let's get started. So the whole concept of marketing volunteerism takes it to a level above what we call volunteer recruitment. I think recruitment is old. It's done. It's finished, right? We're not recruiting volunteers. We're trying to bring volunteers into our organization, but we're marketing. Like, part of what our role is, one of the hats that we've always worn is that voice out in the community, connecting our organizations to people who want to get involved. But the big question is, are you selling something that people want to buy? And I know it's a big, bold question, but I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've taught this live, where I get a group of people and say, you're going to sell this thing. And I get a group of people and say, you're going to buy that thing. And they're two completely different sets of interests. So one of the things, and one of my takeaways for you is that as you're thinking about what you need volunteers to do, then, and you create that role description, is show it to a few people that you're connected with that are not you, that are not embedded into the organization, and see what they think. Is this something that's attractive to them? Are you putting everything but the kitchen sink into your volunteer ask? Right? The whole idea is for you to go out there and it's like fishing, nibble, 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 bite. So the concept of is what you're selling, what people want to buy, right? At this point, our volunteers are smarter. Like, there's been articles in the paper, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of content, not only about volunteerism, and yes, volunteerism, is it on the rise? Is it on, on the decline? It's shifting. There's a fundamental shift that's happening, and a lot of it came out of COVID. And volunteers are following the same pattern that they're using with employment. The employee is running the show. And in many cases, the volunteer wants to run the show. So our volunteers are better educated, they're self-directed, they want information. So they want it at their fingertips. They want good information. They don't want to see things like, if you're interested in volunteering, contact blah, 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 blah. You need to be, and we're going to talk about your website, you need to be giving information. You need to be giving impact stories, visuals that make sense to them, right? And this is the first time we have 4 generations in the field at the same time. So our messages can't be one size fits all, right? So we are looking at a very different kind of volunteer, and we're looking at some significant trends that are happening, right? So technology is taken over, not only on how we communicate with each other, like here I am in Toronto teaching, all over the province, but also how we're meeting each other, how we can educate, how we can market. So technology is big and getting bigger. And as nonprofit organizations, we are way behind, even at the point of when you get off this workshop. And again, challenge number 2 to you, go look at your website. I've checked some websites out, and I can tell you that volunteer stuff is buried, right? It is buried deep. So you want to make sure that that your website is your face, and we'll talk about that. Volunteers want short-term. They want project-based. I'm not saying they're not going to stay, but putting things or as part of your marketing saying we're looking for a 1-year commitment, really? Are we? Does it really make a difference? If they're not going to be happy, are they going to stay anyhow? So we want to remove barriers, but we know that volunteers are looking for project-based. We know that they want short-term, that they may stay on, but they don't want to commit at the beginning to something that's long-term. They're very strategic into what their motivations are. And the only way to find that out is to have those conversations. We are definitely looking at volunteers who have transferable skills and are highly skilled now. We have a huge population that is retiring, but not leaving. So they're leaving their jobs, but they're not leaving their ability and their interest of being involved. And that is a huge low-hanging fruit for us. But we need to figure out what we do in our organizations to attract that. We need to look at how technology is going to support our volunteers. So not just the recruitment side of things, but can we move training to online? Can we make it easier for volunteers to start the process and continue with us through the life cycle of their volunteer work by using technology? And the fact is, volunteers are rethinking their commitments. So, when you talk about the numbers and it's difficult to get volunteers, yeah, it is. And the other thing is, there are certain roles that existed that you may not be able to get volunteers for anymore. So the fundamental question from your end is this a role that we can actually even have? Do we have to look at the role and see, is there a hybrid for this? Is there an opportunity, for example, friendly visiting, that we take a friendly visiting, still have what we can grab at that physical face-to-face level, but can we build a hybrid version of it? During COVID, we went and did things where we had virtual friendly visiting. So is there a way that we can take some of the roles that we have and jig them or shift them, that they are going to be able to be accessible to all volunteers? And also, if there's shutdowns again, if there's challenges that we have, that this can go on, because we can't afford another shutdown, right? I mean, we barely survived the last shutdown as a not-for-profit. It's really hard for us to survive it again. But the fact is, things are changing dramatically, and a lot of what goes on in the volunteer program is being affected by what is going on in the real world, right? So economics, politics, the cost of living, the price of volunteering. These are all affecting why people volunteer and how they volunteer. And it's our roles as leaders of volunteers to consider all those things and look at how we can adjust, adopt, adapt, pivot, and be flexible. So to say like, I can't get volunteers, I'm going to go, yeah, you're not alone, because I've had a lot of organizations call me about this. But then the question is, so what are you going to do about it? Right. And the onus is on us to make the change, not so much on the volunteers. The focus of marketing volunteerism is looking at that hidden market. There are lots of people available, but it requires you to put some thought into where are you going to find those people with those roles. And it starts with the role description, right? So you look at the role description, you look at what it is that you need volunteers to do. But that hidden market is that unique group of volunteers that has skills, that have connections, that have their own networks that you can make connect with. So an example, there are, and Dean can probably test this, like 4,000 associations in Ontario. These are like-minded groups that have professions and, you know, all different places, but they have these common talents and interests. And they are a group, a hidden market that not-for-profits have not really tapped into. So we tap into the Kiwanis, we tap into those local groups, we tap into the, you know, the churches, the synagogues, and so forth. But that association market is huge, right? You want somebody to do presentations, you tap into the Retired Teachers Association. But the trick is to look at what the hidden market is and how it can help you to recruit volunteers. And we'll talk a little bit about that later as well. At the end of the day, and I always say this because I don't want to come off as, okay, just go everywhere. Like you don't want to place unqualified volunteers. That's for sure. You never want to lower your initial screening standards, but screening standards also, in my opinion, cannot be one size fits all. We got people coming in from all different perspectives, with all different experiences, with all different abilities to get screened. We have people coming to Canada that have very little supports, that can't do certain reference checks and so forth. So again, you go back to the role, and does that role require this level of screening? Is there a way that we can build in roles that are going to be less risk aversive? Is it a low, medium, or high risk? So again, we have to look at those things. So, you know, I want to make sure that you're going through the process, you're not cutting corners, you know, but you need to look at your roles and say, okay, does this particular role really require having a criminal reference check? Or are there things that we can do if we can't get those? Is there something that we can do, like a buddy system, a shadowing, a modeling, so that we can feel comfortable ourselves before we bring volunteers in? So I just want to set that as the foundation and the framework, that I'm not saying as I get excited and say, you know, go everywhere and find volunteers. I'm not ignoring the fact that we do have to do our due diligence. So it does. So when you're looking at marketing volunteers, you start with the position descriptions, right? So this particular workshop is not about building the position descriptions, but it gives you the clues as to where you're going to look for volunteers. So as you're building out the responsibilities, as you're building out the qualifications, as you're building out the expectations for the volunteer, you start thinking about, okay, where can we get people who can do these things? Where can we get people who have those qualifications? And don't let your position descriptions be so everything but the kitchen sink in there, that you're actually, again, putting another barrier to volunteering. So sometimes position descriptions or roles need to be broken down. Maybe there's one volunteer doing this component of the role and another volunteer doing another component of the role, which allows you to go and market for different skill sets. So it all kind of starts, you know, if I was planning recruitment or marketing, it would go, what am I looking for volunteers to do? When do I need these volunteers? Where is the best place to find these volunteers? So at the end of the day, like, that role description is important. And the other thing is, when you're bringing volunteers in, you want to make sure that kind of what it is that you're asking them to do is what they're doing. So, I've always wondered why you decided to be a dog. I was fooled by the job description. So it's just understanding that what they're doing and what you want them to do is what you're actually going out marketing for. So you take a step back because we're planning marketing and you start with a SWOT analysis. And as volunteer programs, I think every year we should be doing this, taking a step back and thinking about, as a volunteer program, so I'm not considering so much more about the organizational strengths, but the strengths of the volunteer program. What is it that you do well? So internally, what are we good at? How do we support our volunteers? What tools and resources do we have to bring in volunteers? How easy is it them to come in? What are our opportunities? Where can we engage volunteers? Where is that uniqueness that will make us be attractive to volunteers? So those two are the internal sides of things. The other two are more about the external. So things like I mentioned before, the threats. We can't control the cost of living. We can't control the cost of gas. We can't control the fact that people are unemployed and have to shift where they used to come in to do volunteer work. They now have to be home with their children. There are things that we cannot control. The question is, can we turn some of these things into opportunities, right? And areas that we're weak in, do we still do that? So like I said, there's been certain roles that we've lost over the past few years are very, very difficult to get volunteers in. Are you putting the effort in for very little return on investment? Is there an opportunity to find roles that will be of more interest to volunteers, but also help your organization in a different way? Can we hybrid some of the roles that we have? So I talked about this a little bit. In terms of slides, sometimes I kind of talk before I actually get into the slides. I'll give you this. But this is really what I was talking about, is the external stuff. So there's stuff going around, whether in your local community, whether provincially, whether nationally, that is driving our business. So on a positive side, technology is driving our business in a positive way. On a social side, I think social media and so forth is a positive opportunity for us to get to places that we couldn't get to before, right? And we need to embrace those two areas to be successful when it comes to marketing volunteers. Economically and politically, things are shifting, right? And in some cases, for some organizations, it's an asset of what's going on. And in some, it's a huge threat, right? So individually, you need to kind of know where you stand before you start going out marketing volunteers, because like I said, you could be running upriver with a lot of effort for very little return on investment. So you start by creating a plan, right? The work plan is, what are the goals? So what does the year look like? What do we need volunteers for? So we know we have an event here. We know we have an event there. We know that when our opportune times are, we want students. We know when we're supposed to be reaching out to students. You're not reaching out to students in September. You're not reaching out to students in June. The best time is before holidays, so October, November. And then depending on the students, like universities, going after them in May is a no-go. So I don't know who's on the call. Those seasoned administrators and volunteers know all this. New volunteer coordinators may not know that. There's opportune times. You don't hit them during exams and you don't hit them in May. So you got short windows to go after them. So you want to create the goals for recruitment and marketing. Who is your audience? So who do you want to go after? And like I said, my focus on this is target marketing, right? Going where you would find the skills and the people most abundant. So what is the best strategy to do this? Is it connecting and networking? Is it social media, which we're all really bad at? Is it building out your website? Is it things like going into, especially in small rural communities, doing displays, doing, active presentations? You guys know that. I don't know that. I know that there's been a shift. I don't think there's a lot of return on investment on displays, volunteer displays. Presentations are great for passing on knowledge, but not great for getting volunteers. And then understanding, what you're going to do, and then evaluating it. We don't evaluate our marketing plans. We don't really look at how successful were we. When was the last time you looked at the clicks at your volunteer page of your website, right? It tells you volumes. So looking at things like that are really, really important to see whether the information you have even on your website is something that people are actually clicking into. Before you go and you market, again, just going to put some highlights on some things. Who can do the role? Who is the best person to do the role? So again, you are proactively looking for volunteers. You're not reactively responding to people to come in. If you have no problems getting volunteers, that's great. But most organizations are not, do not have that ability. And if you have no issues, then you should be looking at organizations that you can help out. But who can do the role? What does the ideal volunteer look like? Then what is the message you want to send to them? And nowadays we're talking about impact. So there's a lot of material out there. There's a lot of articles out there. Impact, numbers, stories, visuals. These speak volumes. You put a picture of a group of volunteers doing something, and I'm not talking about, and I apologize for those that do this, that stock photo stuff. I don't love it, right? Because everybody sees it. Like, be genuine. But those pictures tell volumes. Things like infographics tell volumes. And therefore, you can remove some of the verbiage that you've been putting in, saying, this is what volunteers can do for us. Become part of our community and make an impact on. Those words are nice, but they don't say anything. I kind of call it the elevator speech. You have limited real estate to work with. Be creative with it, right? Understand what the message is that you want to get out to volunteers so that they will click in. And then where is the best way to get those messages out? When I say this, the good messaging is a statement in need and how they can help you and benefit, and that benefits them. The two things I'm going to tell you, do not say we need you. The word need and the word help are old-fashioned. So those words really have no meaning anymore. If you're looking for volunteers, the assumption is you need volunteers. So putting on in your messaging, volunteers needed, and I still see that all the time, right? Be part of the solution. I'm fine with that, but then what is the solution? So do that second line. But things like volunteers are needed, that's implied. So again, come up with wording that makes sense and come up with wording that reflects the community you want. So for example, be part of the 500 volunteers that have allowed 32 students to pass their exams. Or, get involved with an organization that is been able to minimize isolation by 25% this year. Like, do you see the difference in that kind of wording? How you can help can be, did you know that, 85% of seniors have not been able to ABC? With your assistance, we can decrease that by ABC. So I'm trying to get you to be a little bit more concrete. Sorry. When it comes to the methods, so there's all different ways to do this. And there are some great platforms out there. There's the volunteer recruitment platforms. I know Brian's on the call and I helped him build that volunteer success platform. There's Indeed, there's Charity Village, there's all these amazing volunteer recruitment platforms, but they are still, no offense, Brian, mass recruiting. They're still putting a large group of organizations up against each other and leaving it for the volunteer to take a look and see which one is different than the other one. So though I'm saying that's definitely a path, but it doesn't give you your voice. You're limited as to the amount of things that you can say. And it's very, to me, very much a outward facing platform. So do it. And there's lots of them across Canada and Toronto. But I think the two strongest ones these days are the word of mouth. That network has not changed. I do believe that fundamentally we want to help. Fundamentally, we want to make a difference in our community. And fundamentally, if we're asked or have that two-way conversation, that our success rate goes up. So I do believe that that networking and that constant connection to people is a great way to get volunteers. But the two areas that we're lacking in is that digital marketing, the social media. We are, as general, and I look at a lot of websites, we're not there. We're not even close. And when I say that things like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, those are amazing tools that have amazing power, and we need to work with those better. So, for example, LinkedIn is getting in the volunteer space, right? There's now a volunteer management. I think it's a AI robot that's posing questions to us. It's become the employment website for people looking for jobs. So why can't it be the volunteer website? And I know they're getting there, but you're already on there looking for yourself. Why aren't you putting stories on there? Why aren't you connecting? That it is one of those sites where you have the opportunity anonymously to connect to a CEO, to connect to an executive director, right? Just through, because the one thing about LinkedIn is people want to connect. So here's an opportunity to do it in such a non-intrusive way and to start that conversation. So highly encourage that. The other two are Facebook and Instagram. I'm not talking about TikTok because I personally am on the fence whether that, there's people who love it, people don't. Younger people, older people, that's another thing we need to consider. So, for example, Facebook, I have two kids in their 20s, and they laugh at me when I say I'm on Facebook. It doesn't even exist in their vocabulary. It's old people. It's where you post ads for, for purses you want to sell. It's where the recipes are. So for younger people, Facebook is not something that you want to use, except I'll say this, in smaller communities, it does have an impact. So, for example, I know in Gravenhurst, they have a local Facebook page, and it's highly effective and highly active and highly supportive. And a lot of not-for-profits are posting their stuff there. But if you're going to use Facebook, you're going to use Instagram, any of those, you need to have a plan, and you need to do it often. This is not one of those things where you post on Facebook or Instagram and ignore it. Because think about your buying habits, right? The more you see something, the more it legitimizes itself, right? The more you see likes and comments, the more you validate who you are. So how is that any different than marketing a volunteer role, right? So you're looking at a store, you're looking at a purse, and it's, and it clicks, and then you see it more and more often. The algorithms behind these things, and again, I'm not a tech expert, but the more you post, the more there's more like things coming to the user. And I know the question you're thinking to yourself is, well, I don't have the time to do this. My social media / marketing team is more focused on events, fundraising, and awareness campaign. And I'm not quite sure how to do this. So my answer to you is, number one, you are a wealth of information for your organization. You have connections and stories and links that they're looking for. So you need to have those conversations with your marketing team. I used to go, when I worked at Arthritis Society, I would go to my marketing team all the time and say, here's a whole bunch of stuff that I'd love to get out there. How do we do that? And then they'd say, well, we're focused on this and this and this. Great. How can I help you? And in return, how can you help me? So as they're busy posting an event or blasting out things that are going on, can they put in something with related to volunteerism on their blast? So again, it's about even negotiating internally. And at minimum, get a volunteer to help you. So you need to have these all of these stories and all these things to market. So one of the things, and I'm kind of going off script here on this, but one of the things you need to do is, as you're retaining your volunteers, part of your retention strategy with volunteers is getting those stories. So, you know, when we talk about supporting volunteers and we talk about getting feedback for volunteers, and how often do we ask volunteers direct questions? You know, what is the best part of your volunteer experience? How can we do things better? What is your takeaway, and what do you think you would share to other people? And get that content, right? Whether it's anonymously or whether people are willing to share their pictures or their names, that doesn't matter to me. I don't think having a name on something is relevant or irrelevant. It's getting the stories and getting that impact, right? And print marketing is still, you know, if you're in a local, especially a small community, if the local newspaper is a popular form of connecting to your community, then that's fine. But again, the question is, are you getting return on investment in the way that you're marketing your volunteer opportunities now? So, like I said to you before, we're looking at both internal, right? What it is that we want, what are our objectives, what are our goals, what are our strategy? And then we have to look at what's going on out there. So what's going on right this second may not be the same what's going on 6 months from now. So you're always looking at marketing. It's not something that you just do off the side of your desk. It really has to be a focused effort. And like I said, be creative. There's no downside to this. This is the fun part of what we do, right? So like, go out there and have some fun with it and talk about, you know, some of your successes, but you have to have a plan, right? And you have to, like I said, create roles that are not only reflective of what's going on here, but if you're not providing opportunities for virtual or minimum hybrid, you're going to struggle, because that is where we're heading. Volunteer programs have got to have, at minimum, a 2-tiered system. So continue what you're doing, but there's lots of opportunity to create virtual roles that will have an impact on the organization, have an impact on your stakeholders, have an impact on your volunteers, right? And on top of that, think about leadership. As you're marketing volunteerism, think about, can you talk about leadership opportunities? Because that's what volunteers are looking for. So maybe they start here, but there's an opportunity to go here. So you want to be able to provide these as well, right? So it's not just, these are the 10 things we're looking for volunteers to do. Okay, you have those 10 things, but what's all the noise around those 10 things? Where else can you get volunteers involved, right? And though this is not a presentation on, you know, what happens next, but having those conversations with the volunteers, the interview, which to me is more of a discussion, that's where some of that stuff starts to come out, right? So marketing 101 is the 5 Ps. So anybody who's taken an MBA course or business course, this is really the basics. What are you selling, right? Who are you exchanging it with? What do you want them to know? What's the cost to them? And where are they doing the volunteer work? So think about this like a chocolate bar, Hershey's chocolate bar. What are you offering? What are you selling? Are you selling the chocolate? Or are you selling the experience? Are you selling, in some cases, it's that 10-minute peace of mind as those bubbles pop into your mouth. It has nothing to do with food. It's about experiences, right? So you need to take the time to figure that out. And you don't need to do this alone. Like, ask people, ask your friends, ask your colleagues, ask your suppliers, ask people, like, what is your take on volunteering, you know, this particular volunteer role? Or show them the role description and say, why would you volunteer here? What is it about what the words on this page that make you want to volunteer? Or what is it in the words on this page that you don't want to volunteer? And get those answers, because we're embedded in it. And as long as we're embedded in it, sometimes we don't see what is the tree through the forest or the forest through the trees. So like I said, there's different types of marketing. There's mass marketing and there's target marketing, but this is where you start. So point number 3 If your website is not attractive for volunteers, if it hasn't been updated, if it's a lot of words, but not a lot of pictures, if you've thrown your job descriptions in there, you know, that full page, that is not an attractive way to engage volunteers. To me, that's a barrier. So at minimum, your volunteer page should be easy to access. So is it buried under resources? Is it buried under get involved? And then when you go into get involved, you see that generic blurb, how you could become part of a community, and then examples of volunteer roles, and then contact us or fill out an application form. I challenge you to relook at that. Put some visuals in there. Put some impact statements in there. Do an infographic that's really fun and easy to look at. You've got to be proud of the things that you've done. So put that on paper. Take your volunteer roles and shorten them into marketing pieces. So I don't want to see job descriptions on there because it doesn't make sense to the volunteer. They don't know what it means yet. So when you put it all there, A, you're using real estate, and B, they don't know what it is, or they're like, I want to do this. And you say, well, you know, you don't really have the skills to do this, but it said right there, I could do that. So if you want to put the job descriptions in there, fine, put them as PDFs, but word it like these are the job descriptions, you know, but everything, they will be discussed during the onboarding process, right? The other thing is, and this is where Lori Gotlieb goes on the soapbox. If a volunteer reaches out to you, please respond back within 48 to 72 hours. I cannot tell you the stories that I've heard from people who are highly skilled and highly available, who have contacted some of the largest organizations in Ontario to be completely ignored. And I'm not going to tell you who it is, but somebody in our field who is what I consider to be an icon. It's not Magda. And it is somebody who went and reached out to a large organization to offer up their services, and nobody reached out. And so she reached out again because she's in the field, and nobody reached out. And then she reached out again. And then here's the kicker, contacted a board member because she knew who that was, and nobody responded back. Okay, so what happens here? A, she's never going to volunteer at that organization. B, she's now going to badmouth that organization and say, don't bother volunteering there. So your website is your face. It's like Match.com. It's the first date. So make it look good, use the real estate well, and don't be buried. So there's one website I was looking at this week for somebody, and the volunteer page was buried under resources. Like, who would have thought that it would be under resources? And I get the get involved, but if you could have volunteer as a tab on its own, good on you, right? Because that's core. Get involved is, okay, you package it, but I would love it that you have volunteer front and center. So look at your website, ask other people to look at your website and see, does it make sense to you, right? And at minimum, do low-hanging fruit, do little things, but do it often. Change up your website. If you can get a volunteer banner, great. But that's your face. That's the clothing on your body is your website. And that's where everybody's going first. That's where they're Googling. In terms of, you know, how do I get volunteers? One of my suggested activities is something called concentrated circles. And some of you may know this and somebody may not. You guys, we all are connected to a ton of people. And taking the time to write that down. So your inner circle is you, your family, your intimate friends, and so forth. Then your next level is your, you know, religious institution, your soccer club, your bridge club, your son's soccer club, your association you belong to. Then you go to your doctor, your manicurist. Like, you are connected to a ton of people. And what I'm not saying to you is like, these are not people you're going to ask to volunteer, because I can hear you say, well, I ask them all the time for things. I'm not going to ask them again. That's not what I'm asking you. It's, do they know somebody? It's that spider web effect. The best way to get volunteers is through somebody, right? It validates who you are. So take the time, either as your team or on your own, and make that list. And I guarantee you, like I said, when I do this workshop live, there's a list of 45 people in 10 minutes. I don't think about it, just do the brain dump and then break that down and look at, okay, who do I contact for what? So that's one tool that you can use for marketing volunteers. The other one is the physical one. So interestingly enough, at one point I was working down in a very large building at University Avenue, and I never even considered to go to the other floors. We're all in the elevator together. And one day I decided to, for those that know me, know that I do this kind of stuff. I knocked on the door of a large accountancy firm and introduced myself, said, hey, I'm above you. And I would love it if somebody I can talk to about potentially either at minimum getting the word out for me, at maximum a team together for an event. And it worked and it happened, right? So it's just never even thought about it. It took me 3 years before I decided to do that. So we have to be a little bit of a salesman ourselves. One point I was in an elevator and some guy was talking about needing to volunteer, and I turned to him and I said, oh, you're in the wrong elevator, buddy. Right. And I just went at him, gave my card. In those days we had cards. So it's just that kind of stuff. When you're driving to work, and you drive by every single day, you're driving by a manufacturing plant, go in there and introduce yourself. Right. That's the fun part of what we do. We talked a little bit about that. So in terms of target marketing, I'm just conscious of time. Couple of things I want to pull out there. Link quickly. So if somebody does reach out to you or you're in that conversation, you've got to move quick, right? You cannot put it, if you've put it out there and somebody has emailed you back, my worst faux pas is that dead space. So you need to respond back. You're having a dialogue. You need to continue the dialogue quickly. If somebody asks you a question, find the answer. It's okay to say, I don't know, but then answer the questions, right? And never promise things that you can't deliver. And the other thing is, we don't ask staff. We tend to do this alone. So if you're in an organization that, staff are asking for volunteers, why can't they be involved in the process of finding volunteers? It seems to be that we're the department that spews them out. What do we say? We defrost them and send them out to, out to the field. But no, this is a partnership. So do staff even know what they need volunteers for? Are they involved in the position descriptions? Can they help you analyze before you go out there? Do they have contacts that you can reach out to, or can they reach out to contacts? So internally, we have a whole network that we can work with as well. I'm just conscious of time here a little bit. Yeah. When you're looking for volunteers, so I like to put this slide in because I just want people to be aware of, as you're marketing volunteers, you're also marketing different kinds of people. And I find that understanding certain personalities and how they fit into roles is also important too, because you don't want to have too many of this, or depending on the role. So I think everybody here knows like the David McClellan motivational factors, and people who are like affiliators. Those are the ones that want to volunteer for the social aspects of things. They're the ones that even when it comes to volunteering or marketing volunteers, they're more connected to that face-to-face recruitment versus so the volunteer displays, going to speakers, they connect more to that than people who are like achievement volunteers are the ones that are probably online looking for the volunteer opportunities. And really that's where focus when it comes to looking for volunteer work. And that's your focus when it comes to marketing out there. And the power people are your people of influence. And when you're marketing those roles, it's really important to try and go face to face. When I say face to face, have that conversation, because you want to make sure you're getting the right person in the right role there. So those are those people, like you're having that conversation through LinkedIn. So even different kind of personalities are attracted to different kinds of modes of recruitment. Katie, I'm just conscious of time. In terms of there's a couple of things I wanted to highlight. So Boomer volunteers, this is our largest group of volunteers right now. So as you know, through COVID, it was the largest mass retirement over the last 3 or 4 years. And they really still want to be involved, and they want to be able to support a cause they believe in. And that's why I said to you, your website, the social media, having that target recruitment concept of being able to tell your story, because these are the people that are looking for, why would I volunteer for you, right? They're not looking to learn new skills. They're not looking to get new experience. They're looking to share skills and feel like they're going to make an impact, right? And these people need to be the boomers, and I'm throwing myself in there. They need to be engaged, right? So you need to make sure that you're checking in with them, that they feel like they're having rewarding experience. And again, another workshop, but you're recognizing them in a way that's meaningful to them, because I'm going to tell you that recognition is a form of recruitment. And I'm using the word recruitment. Those that you recognize in a meaningful way, that they feel like they're being heard, that they're being appreciated, have always been and will always be your best ambassadors. And one of the strongest form of marketing is having a strong voice out there from people outside of you. So marketing or recruitment is not just that process that's we're in recruitment time. It's an ongoing relationship that you have with your volunteers and your stakeholders, because you want them to be able to also be the voice of, the doors open and validation for you. Younger people, again, different group to market. These guys are, they're your emerging thinkers. They are coming, but they're moving fast, right? So when I said to you, they're going to click, they're going to put out their interest. And if you don't respond to them, oh my God, their attention span is 2 seconds and they're off to something else. So we don't have the luxury of time with younger volunteers. You got to move fast. And if you can't move fast, then put stuff out there that they can bite into so that they'll fill out that application form, right? But you have to have that lens there. You have to have that youth lens. So what are the images that you're putting out? So you may be putting out certain images for Facebook. You may be putting certain images out for Instagram. They don't have to be the same. But like I said to you before, it's all about repetition, and it's all about creativity. So my final thoughts before I open it up to questions is think about your marketing materials, and are they actually reflecting the audience you want to approach? And you may have multiple approaches. Are positions available that may interest many different audiences? What is that tangible and intangible return on investment? So again, impact, benefits to the volunteer. And it could be as simple as just a thank you text after they've done something, or it could be as creative as badging, so that, they can put it on their LinkedIn page. So again, that one plays into that recognition. It could be education, and part of education. So you do a micro education, you tape a video of something about time management, you post it on your website, and then there's a certificate that they can get afterwards. And then when you reach out to them because you're looking for new volunteers, they then become a strong advocate for you. And we need to make sure you have shorter, flexible positions, allowing volunteers to have vacations, allowing volunteers to kind of drive it a little bit. And in some cases, you may have to look at the volunteer position itself and say, is that something that we can actually do now? So that is it. Are there questions? I'll open it up. I was trying to get younger volunteers to commit.
Yeah, there's one question there from, I think, Karen. It says, or Carrie, any strategies on getting younger volunteers to commit? As you said, they have a short attention span, but we need volunteers who want to be here and commit to a weekly schedule.
So there's two sides to this. Is That need for the weekly schedule is a challenge these days. So I throw this back at you. Does it have to be the same person every single week? Could you create as a solution a pod, a group of people that fill that weekly schedule, that they have the flexibility? So it's John this week, it's Fred next week, it's Terry the week after, but they're technically one person, they're one pod. The other thing is, some of that weekly schedule stuff is a challenge these days because people are not wanting to do that. So, you know, the volunteer coordinator in me is saying, okay, let's try and figure out a creative way to do this. And the realistic person is, that is one of those things that's starting to be buried in the reality of today, is that people do not want to commit every week individually. So is this something you can look at as a group? So like I said, or the other option is partnering, a buddy system, so that they don't have to commit every week. Between the two of them, they make the decision as to, so one of them has an out. So it could be two people doing one role. In terms of attracting the younger volunteer, like I said, what are they all on? They're on their phones. So social media is key to getting the younger volunteers. And I'm not talking about the school endorsed system. The other option is going to things, especially with the university and college group, going to the clubs. So the university clubs, where they connect together through the year. And the other option is professors. So not the university itself, because that's just this monolith right now, but finding a professor that's teaching a class, reaching out to them, and you're going to go, well, how am I going to do that? Go on LinkedIn. See if you can find them. And then connect and say, I'm looking for somebody or a bunch of people. They love connecting their students to things. But the one thing is, you need to be proactive and you need to be visible out there all the time.
Yeah. That was a question from Catherine Arsenault. I checked out the initials, and she adds, this is explained many times in the orientation process, and they say yes, but then they don't seem to commit. Deb Watch has added a comment. I work for Community Living Mississauga. We support people who have an intellectual disability. We must have a vulnerable sector check for every volunteer. Losing volunteers as they wait for the check to come in, the risk of starting them as volunteers before they come in is high. We recently had a meeting in one of the organizations I volunteer with, where it was revealed, if there's a project at the local school, for example, the school will take on responsibility for providing a list of names to the local police forces for that vulnerability sector check, as opposed to everybody going in individually. That may be an idea. I see we're about 1 minute away from the emergency broadcast. I leave it to you, Laurie.
Okay, so I spent 6 years working at Community Living Toronto running their volunteer program. So I hear what you're saying, and what I'm saying to you is, possibly while they wait for the vulnerable check, are there things that they can be getting involved in, or education or training that you can do with them as they wait for the check to go in? So you know what your timing is going to be. It's going to take you 6 weeks to do it. Is this an opportunity for them to shadow and just monitor and watch instead of actually doing the volunteer work? Because you want to make sure that they're monitored, but they could go into an employment training center or somewhere where there's a lot of staff and just get lay of the land, as well as doing some communication training, some training. And there's the thing. Was that you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's starting on, and there go the phones. That's not too bad.
Yeah.
So Alex actually posted on there. So I'm just letting you know, during the Charity Village conference, Alex and Vasek and I we co-authored a FAQ on how to build out your website. So we're going to launch that and we'll share it with you. Here's Alex.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah, so we're going to share that with you. Like, so all the stuff that we talked about, we're putting paper to pen.
Yes, and I should also say that Charity Village conference. So Lori and I are both on a panel discussion discussing the volunteer shortage. So there's still tickets available. Come and join us.
Nice plug. I wasn't going to do that.
Well, I can do that. Great
yeah, so
presentation. Thank you, Lori.
I hope there's, little tidbits. Like I said, the takeaway, that number one takeaway for me is go look at your website, because that's you, right? And you need to be proud of what's there. And I'm happy to look at, somebody wants me to look at it, and I'm happy to have a little bit of conversation and tell you what I see, but show it to other people and say, what do you see here? Right? Why would you volunteer after seeing this page? And if not, why not?
Yeah.
And Dean, maybe we can even do that like as a mentorship session. Like I know there's one coming up next week, but in the new year, maybe like a few of us could like share our pages and just have a bit of a show and tell and feedback session. Right? Because
Nice.
that's the problem. Sometimes we look at our webpage so many times we're not actually seeing it. We're not seeing it from the point of view of a complete outsider who knows nothing about your organization, right? Nothing about your volunteer program. And so maybe we could do that. Like it could be a really practical session where we're giving each other radical candor, but very, very kind, you know?
Can I
agree.
respond to Catherine for a second? Because this is a question that I get, and we're going to talk about this, I think, in the next workshop. She posed a question about I spend hours doing orientation and training, and then people are going to come and go. I challenge you to move some of this stuff online. There's no reason why you can't be moving some of the stuff on demand and taking the pressure off of you. It's a great way to reinforce. It's a great way for them to go look at it beyond, that one-time orientation, and they forget everything because they were so busy trying to figure out what you were saying, right? So move that stuff online, or move some of it online, or do it as an option. Again, use your website. What is it that you have that is so secretive that it can't be public? Like, honestly, what are we holding on to that is so secretive that we can't put on our website? So think about that. What is public knowledge? I get your policies and procedures may be something you don't, but can you not put a handbook? I don't know. Everybody's at different perspectives, but there's no reason why you can't videotape an orientation and send it out as a link. And then you're going to go, well, how do I know that we did this? There's a test afterwards. There has to be a certain amount of trust. So anyhow, just suggestions.
Yeah.
But that's where we're moving, and that's where we have to move. Anyhow, thank you very much.
I think
I'm
that,
right at 1 o'clock.
yeah, I think that is all the questions we have. I just wanted to say thank you, Lori, for the presentation. One of the things that's really resonated with me was this idea that some of the wording or rhetoric or discourse we use is so outdated, like the word recruitment. I had a discussion with my own group and I said, try and look for the word volunteer in everything we say and do on our website and in public, and you won't find it. You'll find the only word that's there is membership. Well, that doesn't work anymore. You need to talk about volunteers. And there were other excellent examples where you gave us an idea where we could do a better job with the messaging that we send out there. Thank you so much, Lori, and thank you everybody for joining us. Thanks for the help, Alex, and everybody else. See you in a few weeks indeed. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Nice to see you all.